Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Brandy Jones, and I'm your host for the amazing, groundbreaking podcast from Secure Families Initiative, The Other Side of Service, Your Place in the American Story. We're so happy to be coming to you today, and I also have my amazing co host. Sony, please introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. My name is Sonia Avalos, and I am your co-host for The Other Side of Service, a podcast amplifying the stories of American families who are service connected. And we have with us some special people today. I'm excited to get in talking about this silent force, this invisible labor force that in the background the U.S. military relies on to operate effectively. And let's get into it.
Yes, wonderful. I'd like to introduce Cassie Hernandez. She authored an amazing blog at Secure Families Initiative, and she's also our PCS Safety Fellow and Truth Teller. Thank you so much, Cassie, for joining us today. We're excited to hear from you. I'd also like to introduce Monique Street, our certified financial expert and our SFI care work and economic empowerment organizer. Monique, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited that you're here. Wonderful. I know I kind of jumped right into it, but we were just excited to talk about this issue. It's one of the things that, at Secure Families Initiative, we've been working on the advocacy of our military families because we like to say, we're the most impacted by policies every day as families who have served, who currently serve. When we see different things happening in the world, people might not realize like what our everyday lives are like when we hear about our troops being deployed or being mission ready, what that looks like for our families and our spouses and loved ones. I'd love to ask Cassie, I read your amazing blog and like there was so many points touched upon about the work that our military spouses contribute. Can you share more about your story?
Yes, I absolutely can. So freshly married to a Marine and left, my home of record, which is the state of New Jersey, to support his career and with two littles. And within that time frame, everything moves very fast. He's an infantry Marine, so that means that they are always deploying, always training, always gone. And we did 4 deployments in 6 years, very back to back to back. And so I was a primary caregiver for our children. I did all the things at home. I wore all of the hats. I took care of the home. I took care of the husband because he wasn't there. So I was pretty much a single mom in all of that. And in that service, you don't take the time to be able to further your career, to further your education because you're in those roles. Fast forwarding to recent events in life where, I was going through a divorce with this service member, and it came out very much like my role as that spouse and as that support had no value monetarily in any type of aspect, in those roles, those caregiver roles, in that unpaid labor lens. I it doesn't transfer, right? It doesn't transfer to all of these things where um, you have anything tangible. And it was a struggle for me, and I was fighting because I was just saying, like, this is the role that I was doing, and you're expecting me to have the same earning potential as this person. However, when I'm home with my children and I'm moving away from my support system and I'm consistently following someone else's career to support them, I am not having my own career. I am not having my own social security. There's no caregiver benefits. Everything goes to the service member. And the service member is building on themselves. You don't take away from that as a.
Thank you for sharing that. I would love to hear more from you, Monique, and your expertise, but I know people refer to that as like your earning years and things of that nature. And I don't think people stop to think about what that means when we're in this situation and we're not able to have the earning potential happening for us because the mission comes first. I want to share with everyone, Cassie. our amazing military spouse and fierce advocate with Secure Families Initiative. Her piece, The Other Hero at Home, is lighting up conversations around the country and really is the backbone of today's episode. And also, I'd like to say, Monique is going to share more as well with us. But as we're listening to these stories, it's really important to understand that this is really the first time active duty and retired and military spouses are speaking out about our issues specifically that affect and impact us. So I just want to give Monique a chance to come on and share from her experience. And Cassie, stand by. I have some questions for you, and I know Sony does too.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. As a certified financial planner and accredited financial counselor, I think it's really important to have financial professionals who've worked with our military families come out and start speaking more about some of the common things that we're seeing in the community, because it's so easy to maybe look at some numbers on a piece of paper, or that were presented, the statistics, and not truly see the people behind them. And so that's really what keeps me going and what encourages me to continue doing this work. And so I want to speak to something that Cassie actually mentioned. There was a study done by the White House, their Council of Economic Advisors, in 2018, and it said that military spouses are typically more educated, meaning that by a certain age, only 30% of the civilian workforce, non-military connection there, has a college degree, whereas that number for military spouses in that same working age is 40%. So we tend to have higher levels of education, but yet we have the highest unemployment rate, one of the highest unemployment rates in the country in terms of a group of people. And so they actually looked at the cost of that, which was intriguing because it's hard to find data points on that. But they were able to determine that the cost of military spouses being underemployed, having to constantly leave the job market and re enter the job market, back in 2018, that was about 12,000, a little over $12,000 per year. And they estimated that it was just under $190,000 over the span of a service member's
Wow,
20-year career.
Monique.
And so if we adjust that for inflation, I mean, I know that we're well over $200,000 now in 2026. I mean, I haven't looked at those numbers now, but I know that if military spouses are continuing to lose these dollars because they're having to leave the job market, re-enter the job market, and sometimes at very little notice. I myself have done this when my service member was headed to deploy to the Middle East. He was at pre-deployment training, and I found out while he was there that we were expecting our first child. And so we ended up having to plan around that, me being a first time mom, not having him be present because he still had to deploy. And we had to try and navigate this. And one of the best ways for us to navigate it at that time was for me to leave the workforce temporarily so that I could take care of myself, take care of our baby for the first few months after she was born. My husband's watching his first child being born on FaceTime at the time. I mean, there are so many effects, and they can go beyond financial, right? We have these emotional and psychological impacts too, some of the different aspects of service. And I think it's really important for us to look at that, because going back to the point about us being underemployed or sometimes even unemployed, people don't think about the psychological impact that that has on military spouses. You've done all this work to get this degree, to get certifications, to really try and improve yourself professionally, yet you're not able to see the value of that being presented to you in your salary, in your job title, in the opportunities that are being presented to you. And so again, we have to, yes, acknowledge that the numbers matter, because they absolutely do. We need this income that we're out here seeking, but we also want to look beyond that and start thinking about whether or not this is becoming a larger psychological and potential mental health issue to have our families being so far behind financially.
Monique, you gave us so much to think about. I'm just like kind of taking it in myself. I wonder, Sony, if you had any further questions to follow up with Monique and Cassie after hearing all of their,
Absolutely do.
amazing points that were made.
Right. They are amazing points. And forgive me, I was looking down because I was actually taking notes while you were speaking. The stories that you all tell and the narrative that you all share is common. It's unfortunately too common, right? I wanted to actually ask a question and pose it to both of you, Cassie, you first, and then Monique. I want to know two things. One, I want to know how old you were when you came into this culture. And I want to know a little bit about your identity before you entered this culture. Like, you know what I mean? Help paint a little bit of a picture of who you are and who you were when you came into this, please, Cassie.
Oh, that's such a loaded question. So I was married at 19. I went into this at 19 years old. So I was still a baby, still fresh into really figuring out who I was and what I wanted to do. But I did have so many goals and aspirations and things that I wanted to do. Because the world is your oyster, right? Correct. Like, so like, but I did have babies, and I did have things, but that definitely got put on hold because it was service and mission first, and that career is more important. And I think that I saw that a lot going in, and that was a lot of the struggle, I think, and a lot of what I could see was young spouses. And I think part of why the divorce rate, I think, is so high is because when you marry that young and you figure out your goals are not aligned and you're giving more than you're getting to take, there's no half and half, there's no 50-50. A lot of those relationships, those marriages, those connections don't last because of that.
So I know that's going to resonate with so many who are listening right now. Thank you for sharing that. Monique, I'd love to hear what you think of that when you go back and look in the past.
So when I go back and look at the past, sometimes I laugh a little bit because my husband and I, we actually met in college. We went to the same HBCU and we were serving as student ambassadors together. And my husband was very
Wow.
involved on campus. I mean, he was a student ambassador. He was Greek. He was on the executive board for his fraternity. He was an engineering student. He was doing all of these things. And so I got to know him and befriend him in that light without even knowing that he was in ROTC at the time. And so when he asked me out on our first date and we started dating, that's when I learned that he was planning to go into the army when he graduated. And I told a friend, I was like, I don't know if this can even go anywhere because I don't know if I could see myself being an army girlfriend or an army wife or any of those things, right? Because I had so many of my own goals and I didn't know how we would be able to make things work. Now, luckily for my husband, I mean, he's an amazing person, and so it was hard to overlook that. I genuinely love him, love being with him, and I'm happy about the life that we built. It's just that when I met him and when I started college, I was someone who was hardworking. I completed the first year of college before I even stepped on a campus. I was there on a full academic scholarship. I just knew that I was going to be able to go on and do all of these great and wonderful things. And like Cassie mentioned, the world is your oyster. I was so optimistic coming out of college. I thought, oh, they say that, it's difficult for military spouses to find jobs, but I'm sure I can make a way. I'm sure I can figure it out. And it is hard. It really is. They're not just saying that. It's very, very difficult to maintain a career because at the time when I was younger, I don't think I mentioned my age. I mean, we got married a month before my 22nd birthday. I did not realize that there is a huge difference between finding a job and finding a career. And for a lot of us as military spouses, sure, we've had different jobs all over the country, maybe in other parts of the world, but are they truly a career? Are we on the same type of trajectory where we can expect growth in our income, our salaries over time? I know for myself, there have been times where we PCS, I moved somewhere and I'm getting a job where the salary's lower. Why is this happening? And sometimes the cost of living was higher while the salary was lower, right? The math doesn't always make sense for us. And so it is difficult, especially I think for military spouses who had all of these different goals and ambitions. And I don't even want to just talk about it from the military spouse's perspective. I don't want to speak for my husband, and he's very humble. He's never going to admit this, but I can tell that sometimes there's even maybe a little bit of guilt on his part because of how difficult it has been for me to maintain a career. And I know that, again, we keep talking about the financial impacts and everything, but you can see, right, that it's deeper than that. You can see that there is a clear emotional tie for our families, not just the spouses, even the service members, for what's happening with military spouse employment.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Monique. It resonated with me in like so many ways. I know I was married at 23. I think like the same like thought about it's harmful in a moral injury type of way that we don't really hear
Yes.
people speak to. And I would also say just lifting up what both of you are speaking to, which is what we, are seeing at Secure Families Initiative is really unpaid labor that military spouses are giving. It never ends. There's no way to like share, like you have a million things and responsibilities that you're doing, but yet you have no paycheck for that, no stipend to show that
Right.
effort. And so I would just say, I know we're getting close to closing out this podcast today, and I know Sony and I have so many more questions, honestly, after this.
I do. I
I
do. I still
think
have tons, actually.
I wanted to just share with everyone who's listening in the audience, the intention of creating this space at Secure Families Initiative for us to speak as spouses and family members of those who serve and people who take care of those who serve that we might not traditionally consider that are in this other side of service discussion, but that's going to be like our physicians. It's going to be school teachers who are taking care of military children. It's going to be a larger community than we probably ever thought of. And the goal here is to make sure that when you hear our stories, as those who are out here, making decisions about who to vote for and things of that nature, like it really impacts us as families who serve, which therefore impacts our national security. And all of us are impacted by that as a whole in our nation. And so I wanted to make sure that as you continue to come to our podcast and listen, that we could have some takeaways that are kind of grounding the discussion, that these are really important issues that we're facing for our families. And this is really the first time that we've been able to speak to those issues. Sony, I would love to have you close us out.
All right. So there's one thing I would like to do to definitely close us out. Just quick one line wisdom from Cassie, Monique. Give me one line of wisdom for someone entering into the culture, in the culture, about to transition out of the culture. Talk to me. Give me at least one line of.
I think it's advocate, right? Advocate for yourself. Speak up for speak your truth. Speak up for yourself. Know your just advocate. You know what your role is. You know what you're doing. You add the value to yourself. So advocate. Speak up. Say something because no one knows until you say something.
Thank you. That is perfect. And Monique.
I would say that my one word or one line is to connect with the community. We're expecting a snowstorm here. We don't know how bad it's going to get. I grew up in the South, so I don't do well with snow. And in a time like this, I would love to be able to just run to my dad's house because he's always over prepared. He probably has a secret bunker under his home that we don't even know anything about. But we don't have the ability to just go and run and do that, right? But we still want to build community. We still want to take care of each other. And in times like this, you're reminded of how important that is. And far too often, I hear from military spouses that are struggling to do this on their own. And you don't have to do this on your own. Like, I really want people to know that even if you don't have the biological family support near you. Your military family is always here and we're always happy to support you. Please come and join us at Secure Families Initiative. We are all about community. There are communities that you can possibly join that are near you, but find some way to connect with other people, because this life was not meant to be lived alone, and you don't have to do it alone.
Advocate and connect. Perfect. I love it. You see how beautifully that just came together off the cuff. Um, you know, reflecting on the stories and listening to that wisdom, it makes me have a greater appreciation for this platform where you're able to share your stories and encourage others to share their stories for the public, the voter. If you've ever thanked a service member for their sacrifice, now's the time to ask yourself, who's holding that life together while they serve? When you see a service member and you thank them for their service, what you're actually doing is thanking them for their sacrifice. Many of them that you're speaking to don't even know what it is that they're sacrificing. You just heard from two women who joined into a culture at 19 and 22 years old. Can you imagine comprehending what someone is thanking you for in the grocery store, as you're walking through it with your children, your significant other halfway across the globe, and someone has reduced it to thanking you for your service, or thanking your husband, your wife, your spouse for their service? This is a platform for you. Your service and your sacrifice matters. Whether you hear it from your significant other, whether you hear it from your military community, whether it's a discount at a store because you showed your ID, whether you were being present at your children's school when there's no other family around to support and be there at those plays, when the other parent isn't there to coach the little league team, when you can't find stable employment in a career that you're passionate about, when there's just not enough resources and money for you to get the degree that you need for the trajectory in the field that you've already worked in. Just like there's no guide to having children, there's no guide to starting a family, there's no guide to living this life depending on your faith walk. Imagine being young enough to get married, but not being old enough to vote. I got married at 17 to a service member and moved across the country. I can't imagine now asking one of my children to do the same. I can't imagine asking anyone's children to do the same. As you go forward after listening to this, there are things you have to keep in mind. There's a whole population of people out there that are being overlooked, and they're your neighbors. Being a military spouse doesn't make a person not human, doesn't make them different in that way. It means take the pressures of life that already exist and add another layer. Take the caste system of our society and now make subsystems within it. We're going to get into all that as we dive deeper into this podcast and deeper into stories. For the spouses watching, I appreciate how you sustain. I'm not going to call it resilience, because there should be no one trying to help you build a resilience to a lifestyle that is rooted in your oppression. I appreciate your ability to self-sustain as best you can in the most trying times. I appreciate the fact that even when the world is unfair to you and you're being sold a narrative that you're supported, you give grace to your service member who may have brought you into this culture very much unknowingly. I see you. We want to hear you. So, when you think about the military, whoever you are, I want you to think it's the spouse juggling kids alone during deployment. It's the partner who's moved 5 times in 7 years. It's the caregiver who never got a paycheck, but keeps the mission going anyway. It's the child that went to 7 different schools before they ever reached high school. We are the military family's Department of War workers, and we're done being invisible. Our label is essential, our stories matter, and our demands are overdue. For everybody, vote like we matter, advocate like we exist, organize like your democracy depends on it, because it does. This is The Other Side of Service. I'm your co-host, Soni. Thank you for joining us.